Hello and welcome to the If the Mirror Could Talk podcast. Today and every day we'll be diving in talking about self-discovery, healing, and embracing the person that you are staring back at in the mirror. I am Mira Young, your host and guide to journey of self-reflecting, growth, and self-acceptance. Each week, we'll dive into conversations about confidence, purpose, and challenges we face in becoming our most authentic self. And from overcoming grief to breakthrough, we have a special guest here today. So take a deep breath, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, do you like what you see in the mirror? And without further ado, this episode is going to be about you are not broken, you are becoming. We'll discuss how grief impacts self identity and self worth, the role of self acceptance and healing in the healing process, and strategies to release guilt and embrace the present. Our special guest today is a acceptance coach, and Chris Mahoney Mamone is an acceptance coach that helps people heal from grief, loss, trauma to discover their self acceptance and step into their personal power. So, without further ado, Chris, I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself and tell the people what made you want to be an acceptance coach and what an acceptance coach even is.
Definitely. So I just want to say thank you for having me on your podcast. It was a real pleasure to meet you last week, and I'm glad
Yeah.
we get to have this dialogue today. So,
Yes, as well.
um, so for the listeners, my name is Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach. And what I do is I help people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. And something that I'll share, I've gotten this question a lot. What is an acceptance coach? And I've had a lot of people say, I've never heard of that before. And
Right.
truthfully, I just came up with it. And how I got to that journey, by the way, was a lot of grief and a lot of loss and trauma that I went through personally. And so, in a nutshell, back in 2020, I lost my grandfather to terminal cancer. And I had the experience to be there as he passed. I rushed in the room, and I unfortunately was there to hold him as he passed away. It was my first really tragic experience with death, and I went through a big bout of depression after that, and it was really kind of shocked my world, as it would with anybody that would experience that. Unfortunately, 2 years later, I was also blessed with the not so fun side of life, which was losing my son to stillborn. And
Yeah.
so um, I had a lot of tragic moments in my life that happened in such a really short period of time, and I went through a lot of depression. I went through a lot of strife and trauma from that. And what I came out of it with is that when you're going through these situations in life, yes, they're very painful, but they are what I like to call a gift in shitty wrapping paper. We didn't ask for it, we didn't want it, but it happened, right? And so where I came up with acceptance coach was that I didn't like these things. I fought with it for a very long time after each one of those losses. And I actually got myself to a place where I said, I have to accept this. My grandpa's not here anymore. My son's not coming back no matter what I do. And so I forced myself to say, you can either create or destroy in this moment in your life. And so I chose to create because I'd lived in that dark place for a minute. And so I also realized that grief is not something very well talked about in the United States. For example, when people pass away or die, the body gets moved to a funeral home, and it's very behind the scenes thing, and we see it as this very painful, traumatic thing in our life, but we also don't see the gifts, lessons, and blessings that actually come from that moment. And so being an acceptance coach is part about learning how to find self-acceptance through that and understanding that grief is a transformational journey of who you're going to become. And when we go through grief and loss and trauma, we're shedding layers of who we are to find out who this new version of us is. And so that's a very individual, personalized journey for people. And some people do it in months, some people it takes years, even decades to do that. That's a very individual journey. And I've been very blessed to help people with that.
And I I was just really astounded when I heard your story and I heard the things that you and your wife went through together. I felt like that was it brought you guys closer together, but then it also, individually put you on a journey of acceptance. And I want to know, what is it like if you are a partner, you're in a relationship and you're on a journey of accepting something, like the loss of your son, you talked about, you're accepting that loss, and you're a couple. How do you guys deal with that together and individually? Or how have you
Uh,
been able to overcome that?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question because that's something that is not very well talked about, by the way, even in the loss community,
Mm,
even in grief and trauma people I've talked to, and I've gone to therapy and whatnot, it's not discussed. And so
mhm.
I'd love to shed some light on that.
Yes.
Um, I'm a very external griever. I'm more of an emotional kind of guy. I like wear my heart on my sleeve, and
Mhm.
my way of healing is to talk about my son, which is why I'm on podcasts a lot, is that I just don't want him to be forgotten. I don't want him to be this thing that happened in my life or this circumstance that happened and that was it. It's done and over. I didn't want that. And so I chose to face my pain head on and break out and share the story about him and give a legacy to my son. And so that's kind of why I do what I do. And that's really helped me. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she's the opposite of me. She's an internal griever. And
Okay.
so my wife, can't talk about him a lot, can't share those emotions a lot. And I don't blame her, by the way, because those are very painful things. And what I do want to preface, by the way, if you're in a situation where your partner or spouse or whatever, you guys are pregnant and go through this, women have a very different experience with that than men do. And
Mhm.
so we have to respect that and see those from that different perspective.
Yeah.
Um, when my wife and I went through this, by the way, it brought us closer together. I can tell you when we met our son, I don't remember this, by the way. My wife told me this after the fact. She said in the middle of this panic, because we found out his heart stopped at night one day, and we had to go deliver him the next day. So she had to live with this thing for many hours before giving birth to him.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is that somewhere in the mix of that, my wife told me after the fact, she said, the little thing that gave me peace was that she said, "We're about to go meet our son," before she gave birth to him. And I
Mm.
don't remember saying that, but she remembers it. And I can tell you when we met our son, even though that was a very tragic thing, it was one of the most beautiful moments. And my wife and I came close together in that moment because it was shared love and it was a shared bond. And people that go through trauma together, people that go through grief together, there's a bond that happens there. And
Mhm.
it's a bond that it's never going to get broken. I don't know
Mm.
how to say that to people, but it's not going to get broken.
Yeah.
And so, back to your question about, what that experience was. My wife's an internal griever. I tend to be a lot external with it. So I'll talk about him a lot. I'll lead with it a lot. I have a necklace of him on me. Um, my wife will have moments where she will cry and have depressed episodes kind of thing every now and then. It's thankfully, this month time out, it doesn't happen as often, but it's still there and it'll always be there.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with that, and I'll wrap up on this section, is just that everybody will be either an external griever or an internal griever, and they grieve very, very differently. So I just want to say respect how you grieve and respect how other people might do that too, because you may run across somebody that's internal and you're external like me, and there's things you won't understand about that, and that's okay, by the way. But see it as an opportunity to kind of learn, those differences in grief.
I agree with that. And I think that really um that really prompts my next question around, you said internal, external. So what do you see a lot of the time from your clients, like the biggest blockage from your clients that you've seen? And what is some techniques that you help them with, as whether they're internal, external grievers, or just have a problem with accepting things that may have happened to them?
I've seen an array from people I've talked to. I have a guy I'm working with right now who, it's hard for me to talk about this, but he got raped by a family member back in his 20s, and he suppressed it his whole life. And so he's 58 years old now, and he is just literally going through that mental blockade of that grief, and he's on that path to acceptance, and I really applaud him for that because he's going through some deep stuff I can't share right now, but he's making a lot of progress, letting those thoughts flow. And so when um, to answer your question directly, when we do go through grief, and acceptance is a really hard thing to do because we've lost something. And so something I learned in the loss community for parents that have lost kids to stillborn is that we didn't just lose our child, we lost the life we envisioned. We lost the future we were looking for. And so our whole world gets shattered by that. And that same thing happens when you lose a spouse, or you lose a grandparent you're really close to, or lose your mom and dad that you're close to, or a gal I talked to yesterday lost one of her best friends in a drunk driving accident. Drunk driver hit and killed her friend. Um, when you experience something that close, you've got a lot of loss in there. And so coming to that acceptance place, it takes a lot of time because, we're humans, we have emotions. We can't just say, oh, well, that happened. And
Mhm.
then act like we're okay. That that writes off our emotions and how we're built as humans. We're built to feel. And so what I would share to people, if you're wondering, how did you find acceptance through those things you went through? I will share it didn't come in 3 months. It didn't come in 6 months for me. It's come in 2 years after losing my kid. It's kind of come to that place. My grandfather took a year. Um, but what that means is, though, with acceptance, it doesn't mean you like it, and it doesn't mean you agree with it. And it doesn't mean that you're just okay and you're just fine. You can move on with life. It doesn't mean those things. It just means that you can say, I went through this loss. I'm hurt. I'm suffering. I'm in pain. I'm depressed. I'm angry. It can be any of those things, but just giving yourself permission to say that and acknowledge yourself. That's what acceptance is about. And that's the platform that gives you the door open to explore your acceptance journey and explore your healing journey for that matter. It's just giving yourself permission in that aspect.
And I love that you said that because it sounds like acceptance is first accepting the situation. It's not just about saying this happened to me, okay, moving on. It's about accepting the situation, accepting that you can feel two things at once. You can feel
Yeah.
like you explained, you might be feeling like this is the most beautiful moment, but it was also a tragic moment at the same time. And that's okay. You can feel two things at once. You can also be in a place of that's okay and being okay. And last time I talked to you, one thing that really resonated with me is you said when you when you accepted that your grandfather passed away, you realized that it wasn't your experience, it was his experience that you were being able to be a part of. And I really, I've really thought that that was so powerful because I felt like a lot of the times people feel like things are happening to them. Like somebody in their family or someone's passed away and it's like this is happening to me, but it's actually someone else's experience that you're being a part of that journey. But that's not your actual journey. So I don't know if you want to expound upon that a little bit, but it really resonated with me and I just wanted to bring that to the listeners today.
I appreciate you bringing that to me because I forgot I shared that part with you. It's something I don't often share with people depending on where they're at in their grief journey, because I will tell you that when I heard that in the middle of losing my grandfather, I got very angry. I got very defensive. I got very, why would you say that to me kind of thing. And so, just to build upon that, um, it is really that person's experience. Even losing my son, that was his experience. It's not mine. And so, um, it's hard. I still have a hard time saying that. I'm feeling feelings I'm sure listeners are feeling right now, the thing coming up here.
Mhm.
But what I'll share is it really is that person's experience that you're a part of. And so, what I want to build upon with that is that all the grief and the suffering and the pain and the depression, the anger, all those things we're feeling, by the way, we are indeed self-inflicting that upon ourselves because that wasn't our experience. We were there for it. We had to see it. And that's our experience, by the way, is we observed it. We
Right.
were just seeing it, hearing it, smell. We were just using our senses to be observational in that moment. And so that's the experience we have. But my grandfather's passing was his journey. That was his experience. It's not mine to own. And so as much as that was very hurtful and very painful for me, the longer I held on to that grief and that anger place that I was in because I lost somebody very close to me, the more I was hurting myself. And it's the same thing I felt when I lost my son. I can tell you, when I found out his heartbeat stopped, I felt like I died inside, honestly. I felt just dead and empty inside. And then when I met him, I was filled with love and gratitude and happiness and just appreciation and saying, wow, there's this thing that looks like me. Like, what is this? Like, and then when I had to go home without him, again, it was sad, it was depressed, it was angry, it was frustrating. So what I share with this is that, to build upon that, that it wasn't my experience. I share those range of emotions with the audience today to say that your grief is what is ultimately causing the pain. And we do that because we're trying to take that experience that's not ours on as our own. And that's where it comes from. And so the longer that we do hold on to that grief and those capacities, we are self-inflicting those pains on ourselves. And that's not to say, by the way, that it's right or wrong. I'm not saying that. But what I want you to take away from this conversation is that it's okay for you to feel those things. It's okay for you to be there. It's okay for you to observe those things. But what I also want you to know is that in the grief process, there is no letting go or moving on. I get so frustrated when people come to me and say those things, towards my own experience or even somebody who's going through grief right now. And I tell everybody I coach the following: there is no forget about it, let it go, move on. It just happened. That doesn't exist. That is a bad philosophy. The one that I want you to have that actually respects you as a person and your grief process is moving forward with this. And that's a place that acceptance comes in. That's a place of allowing yourself to be on a healing journey. That's honoring and respecting your emotions and your feelings and giving yourself the space to actually heal. So if you say moving forward, that's a very empowering thing, for you in your grief process. So if anybody's telling you that let go, move on thing, just don't listen to that. It's a lie. I'm just going to tell you that. There's moving forward, and I want you to be empowered on your grief journey, because ultimately there's gifts and blessings in that moment, as ugly as it may be, for you to become something in life out of that journey.
Yeah, and I don't think you'll ever, truly, forget the experiences that you had. So moving forward is the only option you kind of have in a way. So I definitely agree with that. And I thank you for sharing that. I feel like this is really just a deep topic. And we spoke about faith together. And I want to know, how does faith or spirituality play a role in how you coach and your coaching techniques?
So my faith journey started 5 years ago. Growing up, I didn't go to church much. My friends had a funny joke for me, calling me a C&E Christian, which is stand for go to Christmas and Easter at the church. Um, and so, I share that to make light of things. But I decided to open myself up to faith 5 years ago. And long story short, I had a big windstorm at my house, 40, 50-mile-an-hour winds, trees falling down, all sorts of stuff. I was living in the woods at the time. Anyway, I had a bad day after the windstorm, and I was walking down to get my mail, and I look up in the trees, and there's a cross in the trees, a literal cross like you'd see in the church. And prior to that, I had asked God for a sign, because I said, I just haven't really been in touch with my faith at all, and show me you're real or show me you're there. It gave me a sign. I can't really say it was a better one. My role in faith and coaching, I'm very careful of, because I respect everybody's belief systems, regardless of where they come from. Or, like right now, I'm coaching somebody who has Muslim faith, and I don't know much about it, but I open myself up to asking her a lot of questions when we go down those roads. And there's times that I've asked in my coaching call, I've said, hey, would it be okay if I shared this belief with you about faith? And I just try to be very respectful of it, because again, we all have different belief systems of where we come from. I've actually been blessed in my coaching calls, by the way, especially with this gal who's got Muslim belief. We have a lot in common that we talk about on faith. Our belief systems are worded differently between the Quran and Christianity, but there's commonality there. And I've learned about as much about faith from her as she's learned from me. So it's been a very give and take, which I love. But as far as faith goes, when I see the spot for it, I'll bring it up. I don't use it in a way to push things, but I use it in a way instead to help people ask better questions for themselves and to help people reflect more on their journey. Something I get asked a lot about as a coach is like, do you tell people what to do? That's the furthest thing from what I do. My job is to ask thought provoking questions. My job is to listen to my clients and what their needs are to understand them. And sometimes faith comes into that. And I had a conversation with a client the other day that just said, I don't understand why all this stuff happens to me. And I said, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And I said, I can share personally on my journey. I had people that were not aligned with me in my life for a very long time. And I did ask God, why do I just run across people like this all the time? I got really frustrated one day. I can tell you over a period of 3 months or so, those people started disappearing out of my life for whatever reason. They would end abruptly, some would end just non existent, no contact. They would just go. And then all of a sudden, slowly, people that aligned with me would start coming into the picture, kind of like Mariah and how we met. It's that same kind of thing that those people just start gravitating towards me. So I would speak in terms of my faith of those experiences that I've had, that I do believe in my spiritual walk, that I've started seeing God starts taking people off my path because they're not meant to be there, but he starts putting people on my path that need help and people that could use my connection to better themselves. And so it's this conversation in faith that I say everything happens for a reason, not to be cliche, but everything does happen for a reason. It happens for you and on purpose. And sometimes that bigger role of faith can give you some comfort while you're in grief and loss and trauma, which are very heavy topics and heavy things to deal with, that there will be a better outcome for you. And so I do encourage that if you do practice faith, lean into it. If you're new to faith, like I was, give yourself permission to open up to that and just explore it. And don't try to identify with it right away and say, oh, I have to think this way. Don't do that. Be the observer of that and just say, I'm going to open myself up to this and see what this looks like.
And I love your perspective on that, because when I think of faith, I think of a belief in something you can't see. And I would say I connected to Jesus Christ because I'm a Christian. But when I do talk to people, just in general, I don't usually try to push Christianity on people because it was a time where I didn't want to hear it. So, and I feel like, Christians can seem pushy or judgmental. So I don't like to try to push that ideology on people. But what I do like to say is faith starts with something you can't see. And that's just like when you get in an airplane. You don't know if you're going to make it, but you believe. You have faith in the pilot. You have faith in the unseen, the unknown. You're breathing right now. You got faith that you're going to keep on breathing. So all of these
Yeah.
all of these little things are a continuum of faith that people practice without even knowing it. And then when it gets deeper, because now it's what are you believing for? So people believe, they believe that they are, going through something, or they believe that, what happened to me, it happened to me, and I'm going to be down and depressed forever, or whatever their belief system, and them believing that and having faith in what they're, whatever they're saying to their self is truly, it becomes their religion. It becomes what they tell themselves. So I believe that it coincides. And if you're not a Christian and you're watching this and you're thinking like, oh well, I don't really, I don't have faith. You do have faith, because you have faith in the unseen and the unknown without knowing what it is. And I was talking to someone about this. They um I'm gonna miss my point. What my point is, I want to get back to the grief acceptance. In in the last days of when Jesus was crucified, he asked God, "Why did you forsake me?" And when you're in a place of grief, you're probably asking God the same thing. Why did you do this to me? Why did you forsake me? What do you got going on? And this is Jesus asking God, "Why did you forsake me? I did everything in your name, and you forsake me. And sometimes you're upset, you're mad, but what Jesus didn't know, that God was going to let him rise again. And in your grief and in your times of doubt, or in your times of hurt and pain, God is pruning you to let you rise again, and to hear from people like Chris, so that you can be renewed and say that you can keep on going. keep going. I was telling Chris about a time where my dog died. I was really hurt about that. And um that may be a small thing to somebody, like, oh, your dog died, it is what it is. It's not as big as it's not as big as this or that. And not comparing anyone's trauma, but what I'm trying to say is, in the in all trauma is for a purpose. And whether you believe in Jesus, whether you believe in the Quran, the Bible, what have you, all the pain you go through is for a purpose, for you to come out and be anew. And you don't know the plan. I don't know the plan. Jesus didn't know the plan at the time. But what we do know is that it is light at the end of the tunnel. And this is why I wanted to do this podcast, because it's people that may be looking in the mirror at themselves right now, and they are tired of looking in the mirror. They don't have nothing good to say to themselves. They are down, they are over it, and they feel like, when will it end? When will the pain end? When will the challenges end? When will the work end? When will, the despair in their hearts end? And I'm here to tell you that you will be renewed, and you will come through this. And I want you to tell yourself that I will get through this. Look in the mirror and say that when times get hard, because if you don't believe in nothing, believe in you. Believe that you can do it. So I just wanted to kind of sidebar that, because I know it's people that may not, be as religious, but you are believing in something. And if you don't believe in anything, believe in yourself, and believe that you can overcome, and you're stronger than any obstacle that you faced. So, with that being said,
That was beautiful, Mariah. Thank you.
thank you.
I was sitting there captivated on that one. That was beautifully said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, back to you. I want to talk about, how do you define success? You're a acceptance coach, and you have been through a lot. A success, a lot of people look at success, I want to make a certain amount of money. I talked to you about that last time we talked. I want to make a certain amount of money. I want to do this. I want to do that. But what does success look like to Coach Chris?
So success for me is very different. I'm going to share my story really quick on
Yeah.
that front. I've been that person, by the way, that's made no money, and I've been that person that's made 175 grand a year. I've had all the money in the world. I've had nothing, and I've rode that roller coaster a lot in my life. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, but I do want to share about that. When my grandfather died, I made $27,000 that month in mortgages. Now, I will tell you right now, that money didn't mean a single thing when my grandfather died at all. It meant nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and the car I drove meant nothing. The house I owned meant nothing. Possessions don't mean anything. I'll just say that. What success means for me, by the way, that I get my biggest kicks in life is when I actually get to help somebody. The guy that I brought up who got raped by a family member, when he had breakthroughs last week, I was jumping up and down in my chair. I was so happy for him to have a breakthrough because I saw this release of things. I saw this stepping into his personal power, and I was just like, I wish I could use his name right now, but I can't. But I was just like, dude, yes, yes. I was like, you're right there. Um, my other clients that were going through job loss that found a new job, my clients that went through a rough relationship and found their power again. When I see that transformational change in people, that's success for me. I get excited by that. Um, I don't get that way about cars and money. I'll tell you that. I get money and I'm like, okay, whatever. It's a number. It's a number on your phone, or yeah, it's a green piece of paper on your wallet. That's cool. Um, but when I get opportunities to help people, when I get opportunities to see people grow, people evolve, people become who they are, and that's why I call myself an acceptance coach. That's why part of my slogan for my business is discovering your self acceptance and stepping into your personal power. I cannot describe how beautiful it is to watch people that conformed to what other people said, told them how to believe, think, and feel, become their own person and walk away from that stuff and step in their power. Oh, it is just this beautiful thing. I mean, I've been on Zoom calls where I literally start clapping for people, or I'm sitting there going like this, like, yes, you got it. Yes. Like
Right.
that just gets me excited. So that success to me is my contributions to people. Money and all that other stuff, I'll be honest, come back to faith. God's looking out for me. I can't explain it, but I'm in a place where I wanted to live in this certain town I'm in right now for many, many years, like 10, 15, 20 years. I'm living here now. I don't know how the opportunity came along, but all I can say is God stepped up and helped out. I can tell you that because it wasn't on my volition. Um, I ended up getting a sailboat last year, and the reason I say that, by the way, my grandfather was a big sailor, avid racer in
Oh,
Puget
wow.
Sound for over 10 years in the 70s. Big connection in the yacht club kind of thing. And he was a very average guy. He just loved to help people. He had the biggest heart. He wasn't rich or loaded or anything like people think success is. I mean, he had a boat that was just good enough to race, and he was the kind of guy that made ends meet to have those experiences. But I learned from my grandfather a lot, and it's something also that my son taught me. Is just when you can show up and be there for other people in whatever capacity you can, and help somebody else out, that is the biggest contribution of life, by the way. But you will get the most fulfillment out of that than you will with any material thing you can get.
Yeah.
So,
That is so
yeah.
true. I think we talked about that last time about how third world countries they find so much happiness in the littlest things, and it's so many people that are in America that have their necessities, they have everything they need, and it's like it's not enough, they're still down. Like we have the highest rates of depression and anxiety, and we have everything we need, whereas countries that could barely eat, they are so happy, they are so joyful, and they don't have depression and anxiety, and they're not thinking about that stuff, and it just doesn't, it doesn't come to their mind. So I definitely agree with that, and I think I've been seeing that just more in life, as you go through life and go through like traumatic situations, and you're like, the money, it will never heal the pain. So
Nope.
having those people around you, and those people that love you and they support you and they can uplift you and give you a good laugh when you really need it, and that really matters at the time. That matters than any amount of money you can get. It really does. And I'm learning and growing as I go. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
I'm
I
learning and
mean,
growing.
yeah.
So
I
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's why you're. I was going to share one of my most happiest moments last year. Just to share this,
What's
this was a moment I was broke, by the way, and my family wasn't treating me very nicely at this point in time. So I went to a grocery store to get some food one day, and I was not in a good place. I was borderline having a breakdown on grief and crying.
mhm,
Anyway, there's this big 6'1" black dude at the grocery store. He looks kind of homeless, and he's selling incense.
mhm,
And anyway, I didn't want incense because I'm allergic to it, but for some reason, I don't know why, everybody kept walking past him. He looked like a really nice guy, and
mhm,
he just seemed kind of down on his luck kind of deal. So I went in the store, I bought food for the guy, and then I walked out of the store and I gave him food. I gave him $20. And I said, "Look, I don't want anything from you. I just want to help you. That's all I want to do."
oh,
So this guy, by the way, he looks at me and he says, "Thank you, bro." And then he starts talking to me about God. This is where this got interesting. We
what?
start we have a 30-minute conversation in front of the grocery store, in front of all these people walking back and forth about God. And what he tells me, by the way, and I didn't tell him anything about what I was going through at that point. And
Mhm,
he said, "Look, man, I need to share this message with you. You need to hear this." And I started getting goosebumps. And I was like, "What is going on?" And he said, "I want you to know something. You have the strength to get up every day and face your challenges, regardless of what they are. God has given you that strength. God has given you that power." And he said, "You're going to face a lot of trials coming up. You're going to face a lot more hardship than what you just came from. And it's going to be really tiring. It's going to be really trying. And it's going to be very difficult on you. But I want you to know you have the strength for that." And he said, "Do you actually know what your role is here, by the way, since you have all that strength?" And I'm like, What?" I said, "What? Please share." I said, "I'm a little speechless right now." And he goes, "Your mission, brother, God gave you this strength. Your mission is to show this to other people. Your mission is to go out there and show people that don't have the strength or feel like they don't have it or don't see it, to show it to them, to give it to them, to help them see that they got the strength to do this too. And that they don't have to be in a hardship of life. They don't have to suffer all the time. You can show them how to find that strength and find that power within yourself, give it on to them, and help those other people." And I sat there after I was just like, whew, this got really heavy really fast. And anyway, I've been friends with this guy ever since. I see him every now and then. He doesn't have a phone, so I never can keep track of him. But when I see him at the store, We give each other bro hugs in the parking lot. People look at us like we're crazy. But he's one of these guys, by the way, and I don't know why I was sharing the story, but it was very fulfilling to me in a very dark place I was in at that day that this guy came across my path. God put him there. And we had this conversation. And after that conversation, by the way, is when I really started coaching people. And it's when I started, I ran into people on the street that were homeless. I would buy them lunch and hear their stories and hug strangers, complete strangers. And I got the most fulfillment out of my life, by the way, because I met this guy. And so, I think the reason I'm sharing this is like, back to what we were talking about about success. That day was success when I met this guy. That was success. That's what it looked like. And it's never about your money and your status or your stuff you buy, but that experience I had with that guy changed my life. And he's still somebody that I see on the corner by the store where I'm at. I see him, I go hug the guy. I'm a bro with this guy, and I appreciate everything he said to me in one of the darkest moments of my life because it gave me fulfillment. It reminded me of my purpose, and I now go out there and say, I'll help you find the strength when you're in that dark place when nobody cares. And I'm going to be the guy that steps up and does it for you. So I would encourage people, be that for somebody else in your life. If you see people like that, go help them, go hug them, go listen to their story. You'll get this big urge of fulfillment just from helping that other person. So,
That is truly divine, Coach Chris, because the biggest thing that people don't understand about what they're going through is not for them, it's for them to teach others that they can go through it too. It's for them to be able, it's someone that's going to be in your path that you're going to need to show how to get out of the situation, what to do in the situation. And if you've already been through it, you can guide that person on the path. So, whoa, that truly I believe that is true success, and I believe helping one another is true success. I watched this study about trust, and it was like a thesis paper on if more people in the world trust, what would the world look like? And
hmm.
that goes to, if more people trust, would we have like restaurants? So say you cook food at a restaurant and you trust that I'm going to pay you. It's no numbers on it's no prices on the menu, but you trust that I'm going to pay you. I give you what I have, and you trust that's all I have. If we were going off of a trust system with everything, what do you think the world would look like today?
I that is a powerful thing I've actually never thought about, to be honest with you. Um, I think I probably wouldn't say this would happen where I live now in the state that I'm in, but back in New Hampshire, where I lived the last 7 years,
Mhm.
that would be a very practical system because we had egg stands and farm stands that I kid you not, you could just walk into, and if you wanted to, you could steal stuff if you wanted to, you could. But I'll share this with you: nobody out there does. Everybody, if you want to buy a carton of eggs and it's $7, $8 or whatever, you put $7, $8 in the jar. It's what you do. Um, we had a very I lived in a small town. We had I call it small because it was 50, like roughly 50,000 people there.
Oh, okay.
Where I'm at now is about 300,000 people, so just massively huge.
Yeah.
Um, but I lived on the outskirts of town, out more in the rural area, so my neighbors were quarter mile each way, if you will.
Mm.
Um, the trust was big. Back to your point, trust was, if you saw somebody that needed help, you helped them. I had my car break down when I first moved there, and two people pulled over and tried to help me fix my car. I was like, "Who are these people? Like, and why are you doing
Wow.
this?" Because it just doesn't happen where I grew up. It doesn't happen in the big city where I grew up. People just right by, just like I said about my friend that I met at the supermarket. 20
Mhm.
people just walk by us. They don't even care.
Right.
They're not even gonna say hi. But back in New Hampshire, where I'm from, people are like, "Oh, your car's broke. You need some help with that?" Like, you know what? I work on cars. Let me look at that for a second. I'm sitting there going, "What is happening right now?" Like,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's such a cool thing that if we did live on trust, by the way, that would change our society holistically. I mean, I think we'd be more inclined to help people. We'd be more inclined to have a higher level of honesty and truth between us. We wouldn't have the need to, something I see a lot today that I do talk about a little bit in coaching is that our attachment to our beliefs is
Mhm,
something that can destroy. And
mhm,
so, um, I tell people in coaching, this is a part of grief too, by the way, because grief, we can get really attached to beliefs.
mhm,
Um, and so, for the sake of argument, just it's an example I can use because everybody can relate to it. If you in like politics, if you're a very far left person or a very far right person, but you may put yourself in a place where you might not be able to understand someone's viewpoint, or you might not be able to challenge your beliefs and
mhm.
say, oh, you know what? That's actually kind of interesting that somebody thought about that. I never thought about that. That trust, the concept that you're talking about, is allowing us to not be so attached to things and, in a sense, learn to detach in a lot of ways and open ourselves up to observation, open us up to the fact that someone may think different than us, or somebody may have a better idea than us, or somebody may have a great service and we may only have a little bit to give. But if we give in that direction and they give back to us, there is no like selfish inherent need in that trust society. There's only how can I serve and how can I help, and that I think is a beautiful place to be with that. I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, I asked that because I think a lot of our self-doubt, a lot of our negative beliefs come from a lack of trust of self. So
Mhm.
we don't trust ourselves and we don't trust others. So it's kind of a mirror effect where I don't trust nobody and I barely trust myself. So when you get into this lockdown state where you got to protect your thoughts from you, you got to protect everything. That looks like what we have now, where a lot of people are self-doubt and they're self-loathing. They don't know if it's going to get better. But when you trust yourself and you trust the people around you, you feel more free, you feel more open, like you said, and you have that interaction back and forth where you can be more open, you can talk freely, you can say things freely. It's okay to feel, two things at once because you trust that it's going to be okay at the end of the road, versus like you don't know what's next, you're so anxious, you're so scared. So when I think of trust, I feel like trust is a big part of self acceptance, because you have to trust yourself to accept what's to come, because it may get better today and it may be terrible tomorrow and it may get better on Sunday. And so it's a journey. It's an uphill battle. It's the ups and downs, it's ebbs and flows. But when you trust yourself, you know that the destination is always going to be for your good, So I just wanted to touch on that because I saw that and I was like, I wanted to ask you about that, about the trust and how that coincides with, self acceptance as a coach.
It,
Um,
it's a big part of self acceptance. I went to the ocean last month and I got jumped up on the jetty and it was really windy out. There were waves probably 10, 15 feet tall, and my wife was really nervous. But I walked right on the other side of the jetty, right where the waves were crashing.
oh my,
And talk about trust, right? And
oh my
so I share this because I got some weird looks from people like you're gonna die or something. I'm like, nah, I'm fine. And so the reason I say that, by the way, is that grief is like that ocean. By the way, grief can be very calm, very quiet, very I'm fine, I'm okay today. I don't have any weird feelings or hard feelings or sad. I don't have that. I'm just here. And then there's days that you're gonna have the 10, 15 foot tall waves coming at you,
Mhm.
and and most people want to run from it.
Yeah.
Challenge you not to. What I challenge you to do is face them. And I don't say that from a place of ego or a place of, toughen up or any of that. I don't say it from that. I say give yourself permission to feel that when it happens, because you'll be surprised when you do feel that trust that's there when you get that weak grief wave. It won't be this like, oh, you're going to just let it hit you. And that's when you're going
Yeah.
to go, I feel this. I
Yeah.
understand this. You don't have this like, "Ooh, I'm scared, nervous," or any of that. You have this, I feel this. I see this. I understand this. And that's what comes over you. So I wanted to share that, be brave in your grief journey. I know it's really, really hard, by the way. I've been there myself, but give yourself permission to feel that wave sometimes. That 15-footer, it's got a reason and a purpose for you to see it. And by the way, it won't be as bad as you think. I promise you that. It'll actually give you more love and compassion than you see at face value. So.
And that brings me to my next question, because you you said basically you have to let go. You have to trust. But how do you remain accountable in your acceptance journey, like in life? So I'm before you answer that question, I've experienced being around people that have had major grief, major grief. I'm gonna give you an example. I know my mom's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you're telling the people my story," but my mom is a person that experienced major grief. Her mom died at 12 years old. Her grandma died as soon as she found out she was pregnant with me. Not only did her grandma die, but her aunt died 6 months later. Not only did her aunt die 6 months later, her grandpa died. And I think like maybe two other people that I can't recall right now. So in the span of her life, she's only known death. In the span of I guess 15-year period, she's only known death. And I always think to myself, like, how do people overcome, like, how do people live their everyday life? Like when you experience that deep of death, it's like, all right, I'm ready to give it up. I'm just like over
No, yeah.
it.
Yep.
I don't care about nothing. I don't want to do nothing. I don't want to be a part of nothing. I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm over it. So I always think like, because when you experience that kind of death and then you have a job and then you have kids and then you have a husband and then you have a life, and then it's like things are happening, and that's why I asked you that opening question about you and your wife, because it's like life is still going on, things are still
Yep.
happening, bills are still due. um like, so what does that look like? I guess this would be my first question. What does that look like for someone that has experienced so much death, or what does it feel like for someone to experience so much death and then life is still going on? You still got to talk to the people at the job like nothing happened. So what does that feel like or look like for somebody that's experiencing that like in real time?
It's honestly, it's very, very triggering and very, uh, very unsettled is probably the way I'd put that. Um, I had a very unique circumstance because I got laid off from the small bank I was at 3 months before I lost my son. I was My wife's mother was verbally and emotionally abusive towards both of us the whole time because she's got narcissistic issues.
Hmm.
Um, and so, in the middle of all that, I was dealing with joblessness, searching for jobs, listening to, I didn't have many people to talk to myself, honestly. So, I dealt with that a lot internally, which is the opposite of how I grieve.
Yeah.
Um, but what I'll share with you, when you're going through grief and especially loss like that, and when you're going back to back, it can feel like the whole world's caving in on you.
Oh,
I've been there. I had times I went down to that cross I told you guys about, and I yelled at God. I was angry. I was beyond upset, and I said, "How could you do this to me? How could you let this happen to me? I had one thing I asked you for, and you took it away. And that wasn't my job. That wasn't my money. That wasn't my house. That was my kid." And I yelled at him. I cried. I was upset. And he didn't talk back to me for a long time. I'll tell you that. But he started showing me in very small ways, that this all happened for a reason. And I'll be level with you guys. The destruction kept coming. The debt started going up again. Money was running out. Job opportunities never came. My family didn't really, support me much through that. So it just felt like this one thing after another. I call it the avalanche of things. And when that's happening, what I can share with you guys that are going through that process, be kind to yourself, please. Number one, be kind to yourself. The world has already taken all the negativity for you. Let them have it. But be kind to yourself and learn how to talk to yourself in a kind way. Um, we as a society are very hard on ourselves. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to manage things. And especially if you have a family and you got two kids and you got a husband and you got a job, you got all this stuff going on.
mhm.
If you try to distract yourself from that grief, what I'll share with you is emotions that are suppressed, they build into monsters. And when those monsters get unleashed, it will cause chaos and destruction beyond what you're seeing. And so I use the example that when emotions are this big, they're very easy to deal with. I say that candidly, they're very easy. When you build an emotion this big, it's a monster. You're dealing with 10 or 20 compounded things. And that sets you up kind of in a sense for failure in a lot of ways. And so when you're going through that hard grief and you're trying to balance and juggle all these things for life, take time for yourself to be kind. Take time to surround yourself with people that will listen to you, people that are supportive of you. Do not be shy about getting a coach. Do not be shy about getting a therapist. There's nothing wrong with you. Back to what Mariah said when we started this podcast, you are not broken. You are not broken. Please don't ever let anybody make you feel that way. You're not broken. You need to make a shift in your life, a very small shift, by the way. You don't need to change everything, but a very small shift. And those things can be, being kind to yourself, finding that support you need, and giving yourself space to grieve. Taking time to journal things. Maybe it's going to coffee and talking with a friend. Maybe it's like me, going in Facebook groups and finding people that have gone through stillbirth loss. People only listen to you to the capacity in which they've experienced and understand. So don't expect much from people that haven't gone through that. I don't expect people that haven't lost a baby the way I do to even remotely comprehend how I grieve. I don't expect it because you've never experienced it. So it's unfair for me to expect you to be there for me in that capacity, and it's unfair for them to expect things from you at that point. So that would be my advice to you. If you are going through heavy grief like that, don't be shy about seeking out resources, but make sure they're safe, make sure there are people that support you, and make sure you can feel seen and heard and understood as you walk through that grief journey with your support.
Thank you for that. I think that really sheds light on my perspective, because I think sometimes you could just get in a robotic, automated mode where you're numb to everything. You're just doing stuff. You're just going through with emotions. Like you just robotic. You don't want to feel nothing. You shut down your emotions. And I think that's where that avalanche could come in, because it's like you go through that numb phase where it's like I'm just doing what I got to do to get where to get through today, just doing what I got to do. So I thank you for shedding light on that. Okay, so on a lighter note,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, what would you tell your younger self if you could go back in time? What would you tell your younger self to, maybe improve your life today, or just let them know about life in general that you've learned?
I'm so glad you asked that. That's a loaded question for me, but I'm gonna kind of get that contained a little bit.
Yep.
My best bit of advice I would tell my younger self is stop listening to everybody telling you what to do, how to think, how to feel, how to believe. Stop conforming the way people want you to. Stop
Mm,
that. You're an individual. You have gifts, you have blessings, you have lessons to learn. You have things to offer individually. You have a purpose here, by the way, that is yours and no one else's. Your journey, by the way, is yours alone. It's nobody else's. My other thing I tell myself, by the way, is stop putting so much pressure on yourself to work towards perfection or work towards solving everything. You don't have to. That pressure you put on yourself is yours alone, and you have the choice to take that pressure off or put it on as much as you want. But I'd encourage to put that pressure where it aligns with you, and that's really the advice I would give my younger self. And just if I had known what I do today, what I just said to the audience, I'd have a whole different path in my life. So if somebody's listening to this and you're 10 years younger than me, you just got a jump start on life. So,
Secrets to know. So we're going to be wrapping it up soon. I want to play a rapid fire question game called Mirror Mirror, Tell Me More. And I'm going to be asking you some questions. The first one is, in one word, what would you describe? No, we're not going to ask that question. Okay. If the mirror could give you a pep talk, what would it say?
so be confident in yourself.
Okay, awesome. What's your go-to self-care ritual after a long day?
Painting.
Painting. Oh, I love that. And when I look in the mirror, I see finish this sentence. When I look in the mirror, I
Oh,
see.
I see somebody that has survived a lot of hard stuff in life and is still standing strong through the storm.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And Coach Chris, I need you to tell the audience where they can find you at, where they can find you at, and why it is important to get an acceptance coach in their life today.
So, for those of you in the audience, if you want to connect with me, I have a website, acceptancecoach.com, that you can visit at and learn a little bit more about my story. I'm very active on Facebook right now, so you guys can find me on there. I'm also starting my own podcast, funny story, at the end of the month called The Empowered Grief Journey. So I'll be
Oh,
posting some episodes soon
yes.
about that. Um, and then what was your last part of that question? Why?
And
Oh, why?
why do people need a acceptance coach?
I will share with you if you are in a place that I have been many times in life, which is you feel like nothing is working and the struggle is just persistent and relentless, and you've got to do something different, and you got that drive and passion to change your life, but you just don't know how. Give me a call. I'm very happy to help out because I had to do this myself, and I'd rather give you the opportunity to do it with somebody because doing it with a mentor on your path is going to save you a lot of time in life, help you work through those challenges a lot faster. And by the way, uncover who you are, by the way, and find your own journey and find your own purpose. Break free of that conformity. Let's figure out who the real you is.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. The real you. Who are you? And until next time, thank you so much, Coach Chris, for coming to If the Mirror Could Talk. And I want to let you guys know it is your time to like what you see in the mirror. And if the mirror could talk, what would it say to you? Okay, we're done. That
That was so freaking fun. Oh my God. You
we
were awesome at this. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Like
This is my second round. So this is my second episode. So I'm trying to
are you
get better.
serious?
Yes.